Most of the nation will be at least partially covered by the eclipse, but the goal is to get to the totality zone. Joining me is Dr. Mike Reynolds from Florida State College, and he has plenty of experiencing being in complete darkness during these eclipses. Why is it so important to get right in that totality path?
Well, let me use an interesting analogy, Mark. Imagine you go to the Super Bowl. It's like going inside the Super Bowl and actually watching the game in person, totality, versus sitting in your car in the parking lot listening to it on the radio, the partial eclipse.
You want to be in the center of action.
You want to see the Super Bowl.
This action zone right here, this is the dark spot here where you would see totality. Now, you know, it sounds like we're going to be 90% shade. It sounds like that's dark enough, but it's not the same.
It's not. It really isn't.
So you really want to get towards the totality zone. So this is an example of what's actually going to happen. So as the moon comes over the sun, here's the first contact point.
Correct.
And then things get really interesting as the moon comes right about here.
So you have about 10% of the sun that's left, little sliver in the sky. You'll notice the temperature's dropped, the light's a little darker.
But if you go to Charleston, this is what it would look like, completely covered.
Absolutely.
So give us a sense of what that might look like. Actually, we have an example here. This was from last year's eclipse in Micronesia, and this was at the second contact.
Right, this is right before second contact where you have just a few percent of the sun left. Again, not in totality yet, but you can watch that sliver shrinking as the moon moves across the face of the sun. Now, right at this point, you can see just a little bit of the sun, some beating, and then,
wow,
that's your diamond ring. That's your second contact, the last pieces of the sun, and now you start seeing the corona prominences all in its glory.
This is amazing here. This is what I envision. You know, this is your classic Hallmark card, right?
It is.
Of the solar eclipse.
So this is your solar prominence, and basically all they are is a jet of gas that's erupted from the sun, but not with enough force to go deep into space. They usually fall right back in. So you'll see these beautiful kind of pinkish prominences around the edge of the sun. Interesting is the size of this.
Wow. The size is pretty massive.
Yes.
There's the Earth as a reference point.
You're talking about 5 or 6 times the size of Earth.
Yeah.
And you think about this, it doesn't look that big as we looked at that image or even here, but then you compare it to the Earth, it's massive.
So if we have our solar spectacles on, our shades, are we able to see that prominence with our eye or usually with magnification?
Well, during totality, you won't need your spectacles, your eclipse glasses at all. So if the little prominences are visible, if your eyesight's decent, you'll just see little reddish pieces along the edge of the sun with a pair of binoculars.
So this is a zoomed in view of what we'd be seeing there with the naked eye. That little piece of red there.
That's correct.
That is going to be so amazing. I want to get in the car and drive to Charleston to see this. So this is an example here that we took from NASA, and sometimes they can actually eject away from the photosphere in these coronal mass ejections. These CMEs, is that a problem?
They're really dangerous, especially if it's oriented right towards Earth. We have observatories that watch for these because they can knock out weather satellites, communication satellites, and even affect power plants, and have done so, power plants here on Earth. The first major CME that disrupted something was a telegraph line in the 1800s, and it actually set telegraph offices on fire.
Right. So when we get back to the total eclipse right here, we're seeing the corona of the sun. This is something you can't really see without an eclipse. So this is that rare opportunity to see something that you can't see. Right. When we look up at the sun, we're seeing the photosphere, right? The surface of the sun. This is something different. What are these? Are these light filaments, plasma gases? What exactly is this?
This is even a more stunning photograph of what we call the corona or sun's crown. These are filament lines. And basically line up with the sun's magnetic orientation. And so you'll often see this one's a little softer. It depends how active the sun is. Sometimes the sun's real active and you get more well-defined those lines or streaks, filaments. And sometimes it's a little less active and you end up with some interesting inner features called the solar helmet.
So these are like the streamers
coming off the sun.
And we don't know exactly how that's going to look, but there could be some predictions. In fact, this is a forecasted appearance of what that corona may look like with this 2017 event.
We think the sun is going to be on the low end activity-wise, so we're going to have more of reduced filament lines, more of subdued, but we end up with these beautiful, look like earlobe features called the coronal helmets again. Each one's different. I've seen, you know, very active sun coronas. I've seen kind of laid back like this, and they each are pretty spectacular.
It's a beautiful piece of artwork as it is. Can we go back to this diamond ring? Because if we're lucky, we get 2 views of the diamond ring, as long as clouds or rain doesn't block the view. And so this would be the second contact.
Right, and that's your first diamond ring.
That was your first diamond. So now we have to wait a little bit. This particular event will last about 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it depends where you are, between 2 minutes in Oregon all the way to about 2 minutes and 42 seconds in the Midwest.
Okay.
So you have 2 minutes and 40 seconds roughly of totality marked by the first diamond ring. And then you'll notice the beautiful corona, the prominences, just the blackness. You'll look for the colors around the horizon, planets and stars.
What happens to the surroundings when we're plummeted into this darkness?
Well, it's interesting, as you know, we see these beautiful sunset colors when the sun sets or sunrise. They sweep all the way around the horizon, 360 degrees. And you'll look overhead and you'll be able to see Venus, Jupiter, some stars that'll come out. And then there's the reactions of animals, and there's the reactions of humans. I've watched cows think it's nighttime, go back towards the barn and come back out again. I've watched chickens or listened to chickens crow like it's sunrise. I've watched humans do all sorts of interesting things.
And this is the only time where you'll be able to take off the glasses.
That's correct.
This is the safe part right here, because all that ultraviolet radiation is being blocked
by the moon. So everything's safe at this point. You can take off those solar glasses.
Okay, so this is also bizarre. It's rare, but it's called shadow bands. And this is a piece of white paper that is actually capturing these shadows slithering across the ground like snakes.
And you can see this kind of rippled looking effect, almost like a wave. Those are your shadow bands, and they really are eerie looking. Yeah. I haven't seen them that often. They're pretty rare.
We darkened, we went into totality here. Now we're coming back. It's becoming illuminated. We're starting to see those shadows return again after the third contact.
And as you can see, the waves.
Yes.
They look like waves going across the ground, and they're not always well defined, but they're kind of interesting to look for.
Very mysterious. And you were saying, out of all of the eclipses that you've seen, it's been pretty rare.
I've been to 18 total solar eclipses. I've only seen them 4 or 5 times.
Wow. Okay. Now back here, let's get back. We're following. This is the second diamond ring now. So
here you go.
We were watching this happen. 2 minutes, 30 seconds has gone by. We're seeing the second diamond ring. And then
there you go. The sun's back out again, as thin sliver as the sun reappears.
And the Bailey beads. So what we're seeing here is another awesome feature. You can actually see the sunlight coming around the bottom of the moon.
You got to remember, the moon's not a perfect round ball, smooth ball. So you have these breaks where sunlight peeks through the lunar valleys, and the mountains on the moon blocks, and you end up with these beautiful beads like this.
That is stunning. So for those folks that can't get into the zone of totality, there is another opportunity to see what we've just talked about.
That's correct. April 8th, 2024, another total solar eclipse comes across the United States, across Texas, in this case, up towards, again, Illinois. Carbondale gets a second total solar eclipse in 7 years, and then across New England and out to sea. But there are other opportunities too. August 12th, 2045, a few years down the road, but that's the Disney World eclipse. Goes across Disney. And my favorite, March 30th, 2052, will be my 98th birthday, just north of Jacksonville. It's a total solar eclipse.
Well, that's a short drive for us here in our area. I hope to be seeing that with you.
That sounds good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.